This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, 3-ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, we have allowed for some time for the season to marinate, for us to process our thoughts, to get our minds right, to talk about the Cavs for the rest of the offseason. And I feel refreshed. I feel ready to be back at it. And I am glad to be joined by my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Not feeling that refreshed after a week of travel and another week of travel incoming. But nevertheless, I have gone through my morning process. I have a lot of, been just marinating on the season that was. Definitely, I'm excited to talk about it. You might still be processing. You had a busy week. You didn't win an Emmy, but you know what? I still think being nominated is cool as hell. But we do have some awards for the Cleveland Cavaliers that came down the pipeline. Donovan Mitchell was someone's got to win some. Let me tell you.
Donovan Mitchell won first team All-NBA. No surprise there. Evan Mobley is officially an All-NBA player with a second team win for him. Darius Garland did not make the cut, but he was 19th in All-NBA voting. So, kind of officially in that top 20 for All-NBA voting. Really impressive stuff. No surprise there, but it still is nice to see. After we're sitting there, the season is over. Just a reminder of how good these guys were for the year.
Do you think you get a trophy for All NBA? That feels like a plaque.
That's a plaque. That's definitely.
I just got a feeling.
Yeah, that feels like more.
And
of a
is
plaque,
a plaque a trophy? Who's to say?
It depends. It depends on how badly you need to claim that you have a trophy, in my opinion. I've got some plaques. I've got some trophies. I'm more proud of the plaques, so I'm going to count them as a trophy. In addition to them having those awards announced, we did get Koby Altman's end-of-season press conference. I always find those to be very helpful. It feels like a couple years in a row where Koby has come out and said something and the media has gone, I don't really believe him. I don't know if this is going to be how it plays out. And then he does exactly what he said. So I think some of the highlights when you look at that end of season address was kind of what we expected, which is he anticipates that the core four is going to remain. The team is comfortable with their position going into the second apron if they need to. And have the backing from ownership to do that, which, we expected. I think the realities of Evan Mobley getting both Defensive Player of the Year and All-NBA was going to make it nearly impossible to do some of the creative accounting to get under that apron. But the nice thing is those are fixed contracts. If you are someone that looks ahead to kind of those team charts, as the league salary cap increases these next couple of years, getting back under after a couple seasons might be more feasible, but I think the reality is that the Cavs are going to be a second apron team heading into the new league year.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on kind of calling out that, everyone thinks Kobe's playing like 5D chess with these pressers. And I do think this team has kind of been for the, it's been interesting seeing their development over the years because early on they were like the curveball team. They traded for Andre Drummond. They traded for Jared Allen. Like, even they traded for Donovan Mitchell or Larry Markkinen. Like these transactions were things we had no idea were coming. So I feel like they kind of have the reputation as a wilder front office than they've operated as the last 3 years. Like, all they've done is exactly what they told you they were going to do. That you leave the Knicks series saying, hey, we need shooting. Shooting's our number one thing. They go sign Strus and Niang. They leave last year saying, we think we were just banged up. Or some sort 2 years ago now. Sucks that it's not last year. 2 years ago now, they say, we're banged up. We really believe in this group. We're going to go find a coach that believes in this group. And then they ran it back literally, 100% and brought in a new coach. So they did exactly what they said they were going to do. So it does tend to, stand to reason that they're going to do this. Even like the DeAndre Hunter acquisition midseason, if you were paying close attention, you could see the signs. That wasn't like a, whoa, they're going to target a big wing like DeAndre Hunter. Like,
honestly, it was very similar to Karis LeVert, right? Like, we got like 2 months of lead up of, hey, they're probably going to target Karis LeVert because they're down Colin Sexton, they're down Ricky Rubio, and this team desperately needs both a scorer and a ball handler. And he's not the same scorer as Colin Sexton. He's not the same ball handler as Ricky Rubio, but he's kind of that fact. Like, he's going to be able to split the difference a little bit there. So, heading into this offseason, with the realities of being a second apron team, I think it's important for people to understand you are not able to aggregate salaries in a trade. You are not able to combine two players in a deal to trade for one unless that trade is going to get you under the second apron at the end of that transaction. The reality is I don't think that the Cavs are looking to combine multiple high salary players for a low salary player to cut costs. I think that the Cavs are probably motivated to become a better team. And from my standpoint, I'm open to ideas. I am open to whatever, team building things that the team is able to find. But I do think the realities of, really only being in a position to do those kind of 1-for-1 swaps makes me feel like the opportunities to make this team better do not involve trading the core four players. Because we know Evan Mobley is going to be back. We know Donovan Mitchell is going to be back. Those guys are all NBA players, and they are awesome. Why would you not want them back? Then you look at Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen. I would certainly, Darius being 19th in all NBA voting, him being an all-star, and also being on a very affordable contract, I can't see a 1-for-1 swap where the team gets better. Zach Lowe was theorizing, hey, if they want to cut some salary, the Orlando Magic should be desperate to trade Jalen Suggs and a ton of assets to go get Darius Garland. One, if you are the team that is being targeted by a desperate team trying to get better, you're not getting better in that transaction. And then two, Lowe is sitting there being like, oh, that's not really a discount, because Darius, having signed that contract years ago before the salary cap inflated, the types of players that you see at that point are role players. They are, your Jalen Suggs, who's a very high-end role player, Drew Holiday, who's an aging vet, on the way down. Like, I just don't think that there's a lot of opportunities to get better in these 1-for-1 swaps. So I am perfectly comfortable if something were to materialize where that's the case. But just looking at it realistically, looking at Spotrac to try to figure out, okay, well, what's even out there? I think the safe bet is what we heard Koby Altman say, which is the core four players are still going to be back.
Yeah, it just kind of tracks as such. I mean, Jarrett Allen is the guy who kind of gets thrown around the most, and I get it. Yeah. He ended the Pacers series very, very poorly, as did many players. He's the fifth highest paid guy on the team per Spotrac, like... Mm-hmm. Those, if you're looking to get a star back in a 1-for-1 deal, like, I mean, it gets pretty complicated pretty quick to try to get there. There are some interesting constructs or, some interesting things that you can look at, but like, at the end of the day, it's just a little too complicated to make a trade like that. I do kind of expect the starters to be back at this point, the really the top six of the roster. I was going to say,
I expect, we might not know who the starters are. Like, I still think that, there's a case for DeAndre Hunter to be the starting small forward. It's something that I'd like to see at some point, but we'll get into kind of what would need to occur for that. But I do think my anticipation is that the top six is going to be back. And, I tweeted this out last week as I was kind of going through my thoughts and whatnot, where people will talk about, moving Darius for, a role player or two. Like, let's try to get a wing player. Let's try to do this. One, having seen what the load on Donovan Mitchell's body is when Darius is out of the lineup and how that affects his play, I think it's just so clear those two guards make each other better. And two, if our goal is to keep Donovan Mitchell healthy and, productive when we need him, increasing the load on him is not something that I am rushing out to do. And the other thing is, people talk about small backcourts and how few examples there are in NBA history of those types of teams winning a championship. One, I think that's valid. It's part of why we have said Evan Mobley needs to be that guy for the Cavs if they're going to get over the mountaintop. But as few examples as there are of that, Steph Curry and Jordan Poole, I think would probably be the most recent one. As few examples there are of that, there are zero examples. If you look at the last 30, 40 years where a team has traded a current all-star for a role player, and that was the move that got them over the hump. I defy you to find a single example of that where, someone coming off an all-star season was traded for a role player, and that's what made them better. That's one of those things that sounds good on paper. It just doesn't make any sense. It has not occurred. It is nonsense. So from that standpoint, I think, people are going to find their scapegoats. I subscribe to the thinking that what happened against the Pacers was a team-wide failure, right? Like everybody had something that they could have done better in these instances to change that result. Even with the injuries they had, I still believe even with the injuries they had, if they executed better, if they show that mental toughness, I think that they could have won that series. But, I just don't think that is a productive conversation to have. I'm open to examples, but I just don't think there are any.
No, there aren't. You're going to have to get creative. And I do kind of get that argument from those who want to see change. Like they don't just want to hear, no, not possible, and I do think the front office should be, looking creatively as they can, trying to do as many unique things as they can. And this is a front office that's done a nice job of that historically. So, you have to give them, I'm open to interesting ideas. I think that's that's an important point to make when you are kind of advocating. I think we're both generally run it back advocates here. At least,
and that's partly because we've looked at what options are
but
available.
I think that is the important distinction here is it's not because we don't think things could be better and that the team could improve and things like that. It's just that we can't figure it out. And I do pretty firmly believe, especially at the level of analysis we're at, where we're literally talking about this team all the time. We're not a casual fan who's watching a couple games a year. When you're in our seats, I do think if you're gonna criticize, you have to come up with a better idea or a thing you believe in more. Which is why in an on-court example, I felt comfortable criticizing the way the Cavs initiated offense because I said, hey, here's 3 things I would have done different.
Right.
But if I don't got those 3 things I would have done different, I'm just not super inclined to criticize inaction or staying the course.
Do something.
Yeah, in any context. So I do think that is all important context to add. I do want to ask you though, buddy. Does it matter? Does it change your tune a little bit, seeing that Indy's just ripping through New York too, in terms of feeling maybe they're a healthy New York team really doesn't seem to have a ton of great solutions for this Pacers team either. And I know neither of us were that high on this New York team, which I feel like we have to eat a little crow on that too, because they did beat Boston. A little crow, not a lot of crow, a little.
I don't have to do anything I don't want to do.
Oh, that's a great point. But I do, part of me does feel just a little bit well, you lose a series by 17 net points, and
honestly, I feel better.
I feel 5% better. That's how I feel.
What I said at the start of Cavs Pacers when we were doing our preview with Tony East, I said I think Indy's by far the 3rd best team in the East. I think they are dramatically better than New York. They actually had a winning record against winning teams. I don't think the Knicks are that good. I think the Knicks were a call away from losing in the first round. Jaylen Brown playing on a torn meniscus, Porzingis not being able to breathe, Tatum tearing his Achilles, and Drew Holiday just being old. Even if you look at the shooting data, no team played worse 3-point defense than the Knicks against the Celtics. They gave up, when you look at the wide open and open threes, they were giving up 48 wide open threes a game against Boston. like, sure, that's I if anybody told you that that's how you beat the Boston Celtics before the series, I want to give them a pat on the back, but that's not how you do it. And I think you've seen that in this series against Indiana, where, a healthy Pacers team is going to pick apart your weaknesses defensively. And I laughed at Nate Jones tweeting out the other day. I just think the Knicks need to add another big wing.
That was some good work out of you.
Like, honestly, when people talk about adding wings, the apex examples of 3-and-D wings that you find in the NBA that are below the All-Star level are OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. They have both of them. And that lineup is giving up a 148 defensive rating against the Indiana Pacers. Know what the Cavs starting lineup gave up as a defensive rating against the Pacers? 107. Like, it's the example everyone goes to because big wings are the most valuable thing that you have in the NBA. From a Cavs standpoint, I would love to have a big playmaking wing. That's why last offseason, when the ideas of trading like a Jared Allen trade for someone like Brandon Ingram, it's risky, but I was open to the idea because he's a big playmaking wing. Those are so hard to find. From a Cavs standpoint, and really from any NBA team standpoint, the goal when it comes to team building is find the best talent that is available to you, that you can actually go out and acquire, that you believe fits together in a way that allows them to be better than the sum of their parts. And I think that the Cavs have done a really good job finding the best talent that's available to them. I still think getting over the hump is going to require them doing some soul searching and finding ways to be better than the sum of their parts.
You know why I know you're right about this? Because I watched the Indiana Pacers play Tony Bradley for 15 minutes last night. A guy who couldn't play for the Utah Jazz 2 years ago. Like, basketball is just not... I mean, yes, talent acquisition is part of it, but so much of it is about the culture you build, the system you run, and the way your stars empower everyone to make their jobs easier. I always go back... I'm sorry to interrupt you on this, but I always go back to what I was saying mid-season after they acquired DeAndre Hunter and he fit in so seamlessly was it's easy to play Cavaliers basketball right now. Like, if you're good at something, it'll look great on that Cavs team in February and March. And, the biggest thing that has happened in almost all these playoff series so far is that it stops looking easy and fun to play Cavaliers basketball. Yeah. And to be very reductionist, I always love our boy Ben Cox, who is a believer, who is a great listener to the pod, and also wishing all the health to Ben. But he always tweets it every time things get muddy. He always tweets they lose because of their offense. And it's so much of it is that identity, is that maintaining of putting pressure on defense. Like, that's what you need to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think, from a team building standpoint too, right? Like, we use the core four as shorthand. I do think that it's important to kind of make a distinction. Like, when I'm thinking about who the most important members of the Cavs are, there's two that earned all NBA honors and one that was just on the fringe that were all stars, right? Like, I think that Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley, that's just, it's a half tier above, right? And Garland and Mobley in particular, they're still young. They're not even in their primes yet, right? Like, Garland's 25. He's starting to get to that point of physical maturity. Mobley's a couple years away. But the realities of, the situation that they're in is I just don't think that there's a 1-for-1 trade for Jared Allen. Like, you look at like next year's salary sheets on Sport Check, he's their 5th highest paid player on the team. Like, it's really hard to find a 1-for-1 swap that's making the Cavs better. So I think when I look at how the Cavs can get over the hump, right? We understand the internal development parts. I think we're going to get into kind of some of those mental toughness aspects, the maturity that needs to come from this team, what they need to do. But from a, roster building standpoint, I'm assuming that the top 6 will be back. And the question needs to be, with limited ability to shake up what the rotation is, how can we change the way it feels to play against the Cleveland Cavaliers? And I think that question is what needs to be answered when you look at guys, 7 through 10 in the rotation. That needs to be in my opinion, that's the question that the front office needs to ask themselves is, how do we change either from a schematic standpoint, from a rotation standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, from an execution standpoint? What can we do to enhance what our strengths are and make it feel different to play against the Cavs?
Yeah. It's spot on. They just have to get better. And that's why I'm so glad that Koby really hit on mental toughness as the cited leap. And mental toughness being the more important distinction than physical toughness.
Yes.
I think that is something that is, you've made all the excellent points that Cavs won most of the physical indicators, physical markers from that series against Indy. They won at the offensive rebound battle. They won in the paint. They won at the free throw line. Check.
Do you want some stats that kind of back up that point? Because
go ahead.
I do think, I understand people hearing toughness as one of the main takeaways, right? Koby said it, Donovan said it, Darius said it, like that. It's been the common refrain. I do think that there's a distinction. Like, to me, what they are talking about when I hear them, go in depth is mental toughness. It's maturity. And I think maturity is the word that I would use in that instance. But I understand, they feel frustrated in the moment. I get it. But people saying, it's the same thing all over again, it just isn't founded in reality. This is not the same as 2 years ago against the Knicks. Actually, it kind of is a little similar to 2 years ago against the Knicks, because the New York Knicks in the 5-game series against the Cavs, from an offensive rebound standpoint, they won 75-46. That is a plus 29 advantage on the offensive glass. The Cavs versus the Pacers, the Cavs had 70 offensive rebounds. The Pacers had 35. That's a 35 offensive rebound advantage. The Cavs beat up the Pacers on the offensive glass by a larger margin than the Knicks did against them 2 years ago. If you want to talk points in the paint, the Cavs outscored the Indiana Pacers 262-236. That is a 26-point advantage in points in the paint. The Knicks versus the Cavs had a 16-point advantage. They beat up the Indiana Pacers by more points in the paint by a larger margin than they did against the Knicks. So that's offensive rebounds and points in the paint. And I personally am, I was disappointed with how Jared played in games 4 and 5, but people focusing on rebounds because it's the gotcha stat, that's not where the Cavs lost the game. That's not where Jared disappointed me with his performance. Is to say it's the same thing as the Knicks is nonsense, especially for a guy in Jared Allen that averaged 17 and 14 against a much larger, more physical Orlando Magic team last year before a broken rib. It's nonsense. It's important to make these distinctions so you don't sound like a lunatic when you're making these points, because the facts do not line up with what you're saying.
Yeah. By the way, all those Knicks to Pacers stats are funny because not only are they good on their own, it's really hard to do that in a series to win those stats in a series you lost. It
goes to show you where the 3-point shooting went.
Yeah, no kidding.
And also how close some of those games were, right? The Knicks. Honestly, the Knicks made me feel better because they blew a larger lead in the last minute than the Cavs did. And it wasn't 2 BS lane violations that the NBA had to issue an apology the next day over. That was a healthy team blowing a larger lead without 2 blown calls that if either of those calls went the other way, it would have been a Cavs win. So that to me made me feel just a little bit better.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's, so they did win most of those physical markers that we count towards physicality. I do think, in the interest of being a fair and honest evaluator, that there is physicality that doesn't show up in the stats that does
on the perimeter
that still does a good job of making the Cavaliers play another style of basketball. And I just think under that duress, the Cavs, especially their perimeter players, lose. This is where the mental toughness comes in. Have just lost faith in what got them there.
Yeah, it was on the perimeter, right? And maybe my rant was more almost Jared specific and kind of
sure.
They just get beat up kind of thing. But yeah, it was 100% on the perimeter, and one because I do think we need to get into that and I want to discuss it. But just one thing I wanted to note that's just a little bit frustrating to me. And I don't think that there's any agenda behind this kind of stuff. I just think it's an inconsistency thing that bothers me. Even if you look at how, each of these conference finals has been officiated. Game 3, Wolves were allowed a lot more physicality. They were allowed to play a different way. I would like to see a more consistent standard of what is what, because Indy playing New York, they're not able to play Ben Mathurin. Ben Mathurin is a defensive liability. And in game 1, when he tried to even breathe on Jalen Brunson, it's called immediately. Whereas Cavs players are in midair and he's 2-hand shoving them, and it's not even a foul, forget a flagrant. Jaden McDaniels pushes Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from behind while he is drilling a basketball, still planted on the ground. And it's a flagrant. It's a big deal. It's talked about. Obi Toppin shoves Donovan Mitchell with 2 hands in midair, and it's not a flagrant. Like, he's an all-NBA player. You expect him to be protected in the same kind of way, but it's just frustrating that, what is considered a foul, what is considered appropriate physicality varies from game to game and series to series. And it's just frustrating to see someone like Mathurin, who does struggle on defense, be allowed to goon out. And the answer is, well, you guys got to get tougher when you're in midair. Whereas the next series, he's not even allowed to breathe on Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true, but also
it's a bitter gripe from a Homer fan. It's what it is. But I needed to get it off my chest.
I just think it kind of tends to be, I think some of it you do by being the one who is initiating, and by, again, hitting first. Like, we weren't sitting here talking about Miami getting away with excess physicality against the Cavs because the Cavs were too busy either blowing by him in the first place or hitting them first.
Them on the inside, yep.
So, like, some of that stuff is, I understand that impulse, but, like, I do think we need to challenge it because, like, it's not going to go away either, Like, it's not going to... I was
fine with the Pacers' physicality for the most part.
It's just not going to...
in midair.
Yes. There were a couple plays I thought were really dirty, but the macro strategy is not going to stop against this team. Like, they've got 2 small guards who excel when they have freedom of movement. Like, that's not gonna stop. Teams are gonna grab, they're gonna pull, they're gonna bump, they're gonna hit.
Which is all fair play to me. And that's exactly what teams are going to do.
So to go back to that mental toughness, that's why you do all this crap during the season, to get more diversified, to play different kinds of lineups. To have different attack points that bend the defense in different ways, like that. I think that's why I remain so very disappointed in this team's offense coming out of that Pacers series, because it's not like they were the James Harden Rockets where they ran one way all season, didn't really practice anything else, didn't try anything else, didn't build their roster in a way that allowed for anything else. So, when that gets messed up, when that system gets gunked up, the offense would crater. That makes sense. But that's not who this Cavs team was trying to be. So, the fact that that's who they became a high pick and roll spam offense with, half the personnel to do that. They don't have prime James Harden. They had Darius Garland on one leg and Donovan Mitchell on one leg by the end. And all the shooting variants going the other way. And, like, I just think they worked too hard to become matchup proof to make themselves take outable.
Yeah. And I still fundamentally believe that they, Indy forced them into some of these situations, and then their decision making is what made it so problematic. And I think you're correct to make that point. The point's well taken. Honestly, I think from a Cavs standpoint, like, that's the number one takeaway from this offseason, right? Like, write it down on paper, write it down in stone, write it down on an AI transcript provided by Zoom AI Companion, because only you can do your best work, Carter, because Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy. with Zoom AI Companion. I agree, man.
Does it make you feel better at all? Like in a sense of like, not in a like feel good about the loss, but about the team's future, that it's not, like, because I think both of us, tend to agree. Team was good enough. Team was healthy enough to win that series. They didn't not because of some fatal flaw in their toughness physically, or because they couldn't keep Miles Turner off the offensive boards for a free throw attempt, but because they went away from who they are. Like, in some ways, it makes me feel better because, like, hey, you can bring this group back and trust them to learn good lessons, to watch all this film, to, learn from a coach that we really respect in Kenny Atkinson, in terms of, they do have a good autopsy to do, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need to, like we were 2 years ago, be like, well, hope they hit on their signings in free agency, or we're gonna run this back. Like, no, I do think they run this back and just play better, play smarter, play more mature basketball. They would go further if we did this again. Like, does that make you feel better, or conversely, does it make you feel a little worse about the future of the team, given that it's a couple years in a row of this?
I feel a little better, but not much, because I do think that the toughest thing to do in the NBA is talent acquisition, and I think they have the talent to do it. What that Indy series showed me, if the Cavs were fully healthy, I don't think their bad habits would have come up to an extent where they would have lost the series. I still fundamentally believe that they would have won in 5 or 6 games. If you disagree with that, I respect your opinion. I'm not getting moved off this stance. I think, especially like those first 3 games, they could have won all of them in the condition that they were currently in. I think that the Cavs would have won that series. But what that series showed me is when the talent playing field is leveled, whether that is, a healthy Celtics making the conference finals, which obviously didn't occur, or the Oklahoma City Thunder getting there, which I think is going to occur, and I think they are going to smoke whoever comes out of the East. I think the Cavs would have got smoked because the Thunder would be able to do that same thing that Indiana does, with a higher level of talent, with a higher level of ball pressure, with better defensive players. Like, one of the things I really admire with Indy, and it's something that I want to try to steal from them, is I think what they are able to accomplish defensively with the personnel they have far exceeds the defensive talent that they have on that roster. And I do not feel that's the case for the Cavs.
I agree.
I think we play very good base defense with the defensive personnel that we have. I think that this team can play better defense than that. So I feel better from that standpoint. But the reason I don't feel a whole lot better is because even though I think maturity is something that, anyone can accomplish, I think what they need to do is things we've already seen them demonstrate in high leverage games. They did really well in a lot of showcase games, right? They showed toughness coming back from Boston. They out executed against OKC and won that game at home. Like, they showed it at times. So it's not something that we've never seen them display, and I think that that's important. It's also a very hard thing to do as well, and it's something that you either get or you don't. And I thought one of the more poignant examples that Koby brought up at the press conference was, look at Miles Turner. Miles Turner, think back to 2018 when we beat the Pacers in a series. At that time, it was Miles Turner isn't a playoff performer. He's someone that, was in trade rumors at that point. This is 7 years later. Only last year when they made the conference finals did the Miles Turner talk slow down, but there were still some. Right, there's still questions about him as a playoff performer. If he's a big that you can win with in the playoffs, you look at the conference finals across the board. That same thing has been said about Rudy Gobert. That same thing has been said about Julius Randle. That same
about
thing
Karl Anthony Towns, man.
That same thing has been said about
2 straight conference finals for that guy that we all agreed was a big loser 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to throw an asterisk on it. And you know what? Here's the thing. Listen, the important thing.
He got there. I'm not throwing asterisks. He got there.
As much as I, am making the point that anybody can develop from a maturity standpoint and get over that hump, I also understand the flip side of that, because I'm not going to believe in Karl Anthony Towns. I am set in. I am locked in my ways. It's just fundamentally how I view basketball. So if people feel the same way about the Cavs, I understand where you are coming from, but I do think, that maturity element, that figuring out how to make things, more consistent from the regular season to the playoffs is something that requires soul searching, and I think it requires collaboration. Because I think Kenny needs to talk to everybody on the roster and say, we got away from ourselves. Is there something about how we were executing from a schematic standpoint that didn't get that same level of buy-in when the pressure was the highest? Is there something that you would like to see change? Is there something, from your end, from my end? I think, that was one of the things that Kenny talked about all season long, is about how he collaborates with the players. He wants to figure out what does and doesn't work, and they're going to find that healthy middle ground. I think that is really important, and that's the first thing that they need to do is, figure out, how can I make changes? How can I help support what changes you want to make in yourself, so that we can get to a point where we are a little more playoff proof, where we are able to execute, even if we're a little banged up. Because, the level of banged up Donnie was, like, that sucks, but that's playoff wear and tear. Evan Mobley in a walking boot, DeAndre Hunter with a dislocated thumb, and Darius with a splint to put his toe in place. That's a little bit different, but there are going to be series.
Can I challenge real quick there, though? Because Evan, yes, he was hurt. He was as effective as Donnie was, like in terms of, I thought his movement looked, especially by the time he came, obviously missing a game is crazy, and it doesn't not matter that he missed a game. But when he was out
honestly,
there,
I think the game one, he was not able to keep up with Siakam with a injury that required a walking boot for a little bit of time, right? And
what I'm saying is, I think he moved. He played well. Yeah. I would almost put him in the Donnie category and put Hunter and Garland in their own box, because Garland could not move and Hunter couldn't hold the ball.
Actually, that's a great example, because that might be the type of situation that we're in. Like, hey, Mobley has to miss a game. He comes back. He's working. He's playing through it. Like last year, he played through a high ankle sprain. This guy's Wolverine. Like it's really impressive what he's able to do. Can I just say I appreciate, just from an irony standpoint, Pacers fans being like, well, yeah, we blew the loss, but Nesmith left the game and then he came back and he wasn't looking 100%. Oh, yeah, that does actually have an impact on a game. I understand. But I do think that kind of
watching Nembhard pass up like 4 open threes in that game, game 3, broke my spirit, Justin.
And honestly, that's a lesson. Role players sometimes are going to have bad games. They're going to have bad series. That's why I'm not ready to write off Ty Jerome. You look at Dante DiVincenzo. That guy has had playoff series where he has been lights out. He has been a nightmare at various stages of the playoffs. And he has others where he is 2 of 25. Like it's going to happen. And that's why you always want, as you call it, the pumpkin insurance, right? Like you want to have those options you can go to in the rotation. I don't think it necessarily says something about how someone is as a playoff performer. I do say that the indications of that, where you start to have questions, is when guys look like they're not playing their game. If you are playing your game and you are just shooting poorly, I can live with that. If you are passing up shots, if you are, the record scratches when it gets to you, that's when I start to have concerns.
Man, Dante splits, by the way. You brought up Dante DiVincenzo. Last year in New York, he shot 42% from the field, 43% from 3 on 8 threes a game. He's at 28% this year. Just crazy.
And I don't think it means he's not a playoff performer. He did it last year. But this kind of variance happens. That's why you need your stars to be your stars. And that's why you need to have the depth to make up for it. OKC was able to bench Lou Dort at times, who, despite how great he is, defensively, he's had some nightmare offensive series where, even OKC beat guys are like, hey, I don't know if we can survive the Lou Dort minutes. Like, there's going to be series. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of their most impactful players in the finals when they get there, because I still think that they're going to get there. But, that kind of variance happens with role guys. I don't think it necessarily needs to be an indictment of them. I don't think it's a reflection of whether or not they're playoff guys. But you need your stars to be your stars. And in the Cavs standpoint, finding out how to maximize those guys is one of the most important things.
And those guys figuring out how to maximize themselves.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the kind of moments of reflection that I've had in this time off, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think we glossed over the Cavs going away from Mobley a bit too much in the season because it was working? Like, they were such a good clutch team, but there were times where in the clutch, Mobley's not getting the shots. Mobley would have a 20-point quarter and we go away from him in the second half. The outcomes were so good that I think from a process standpoint, we should have been pointing out, Mobley isn't always getting the consistent touches that we expect if he's going to be that guy we rely on in the playoffs. To me, I feel like there are just too many opportunities where, when we have it rolling, we win in the clutch. Most clutch wins in the NBA this season. Donovan and Darius are so good that we're just happy about the outcome. And we weren't being buzzkills about the process, because I feel like too many times Mobley kind of got cut out of that equation. And I think that was something that we saw in the regular season that translated to the playoffs. Do you agree?
I might agree. I just checked. He averaged 5.8 field goals per game in the first half. Field goal attempts per game in the first half. 5.1 in the second half. Oh, that's playoffs. Sorry. Hold on. Give me a second.
That's an annoying filter. It's happened to me a few too many times.
They're killing me, man. Yeah. But either way, so putting that wrong stat aside, apologies. 5.8 in the second half and 7.1 in the first half. So there you go. In the regular season. So it was even more right. Or even
and
more.
Also in 23 clutch games this season, Mobley averaged 0.6 field goal attempts in the clutch.
So all that to say, I think that stat might matter more to me than the stat about the clutch, because the clutch is its own messy thing. It's hard tricky to get big touches in clutch situations. Even when I was like 10 years old, I remember being like, Lakers never find Shaq in the clutch. It's like, well, yeah, because it's really hard to get an entry pass when guys are getting grabbed, pulled, etc. And I'm fine with Darius and Donovan doing the high pick and roll initiation. What I'm most
both of them average fewer than 2 shots as well, which I think is important context to that 0.6.
But I'm fine with them being the lead initiators in the clutch, because it just makes more sense that you're going to be able to do that more consistently, like more often than not. Sure, the pendulum can swing. I'm fine with that, but like it's only going to swing so far. I think what's more disappointing is that first half, second half attempt split, where it's just like kind of no matter what, no matter how close or far the game is, they just kind of stop looking to Evan once they once they leave having like been primed to do so in the first half. And I think maybe that is the bigger problem. And like, I don't think it's a clutch problem. It's a focus problem. I don't know.
I think it's almost, hey, we understand that Evan Mobley is going to need to take the leap for us to be to win a championship. He needs to be that guy, and I don't think that means.
Yeah, but they all know that. Like, why are
no? That's my point. Is I think they all know that, but it's ingraining. Hey, we need to do we have to dedicate the season to helping him get there, and I think what we saw from Mobley was the result of the work that he put in the offseason. The handle was tighter, the shot was better, he was more assertive with the opportunities that he got, but it wasn't the focal point of, hey, we got to keep attacking with Mobley. Like, honestly, I thought the Miami series, the touches that Mobley got versus Miami were fewer than Indy. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we were using Mobley, and then when the pressure of Indy hit, we went away from it. It was, hey, things are flowing. We're not even going to really use this as an opportunity for Mobley to keep attacking. It's just, hey, everything's working, right? Like, Darius is averaging 24 a game, Ty's shooting the lights out. The bench took off in the games in Miami. Like, I feel like one of the things they're going to need to do next season is, hey, we're going to have to figure out if we can sink or swim with Evan Mobley. And he might not get there next year, but we're going to do absolutely everything that we can to try to get him there and to always make sure that he is involved offensively. Like, I think from a touches standpoint, he's the leader of the team. If you look at the regular season stats, in terms of front court touches, he led the team with 28 per game, followed by Darius, and then Jarrett was actually third in front court touches.
And can you define front court touches for the listeners and me, who always forgets exactly what it means?
It means when the first time you receive the ball, when you make the catch, it is initiated in the front court. So, if someone brings up the ball from the back court, or the overall touches, they're bringing the ball up, that's not going to count as a possession that was initiated in the front court. So that's receiving the ball in the half court. I think it's valuable there. And it also goes to show you how they tried to use Donovan off ball last year, right? Because he was the leading scorer, but he's behind Darius and Allen when it comes to those front court touches. When it goes to the playoffs, there was a 25% decrease in Mobley's front court touches. It was down to 21. That just can't happen, man. Like he was behind. Mitchell was the leader. Max Strus was a second on the team. Then it was Jarrett. Then it was Garland. Oh no, sorry, it was Strus, Mitchell and Strus ahead. Then it was Allen and Garland after that. So Darius fell all the way down to fifth. Kind of makes sense, particularly with those indie games. They were moving him off ball,
using this man like Obi Toppin.
Yeah, like I think, to me, the most important thing isn't going to be the number of field goal attempts for Evan Mobley. It's how involved he is offensively. I don't care. Like, obviously, I want to see him aggressive. I want to see him assertive offensively and attacking guys and not passing up opportunities. But I want him to be that focal point, man. Like, I think Darius, leading the team from initiating an offense standpoint, that makes sense. Donovan, it's a few years in a row here, with the exception of the New York years, but even going back to Utah, there's always some nagging lower body thing come playoffs. And I think some of that is bad luck. Like it's landing and rolling your ankle, stuff like that just kind of sucks. Sometimes it's been hamstrings and things like that. But from, a managing the load standpoint, getting Donovan Mitchell to the playoffs healthy and keeping him healthy for a playoff run is one of the most important things to me, because I think that he is that special scorer that we need at those moments in the postseason. I think he absolutely brings that to the table. So from my standpoint, the solution to managing Donovan's load in the regular season, where he already was coming off, a career low in minutes and usage, is we're still going to use you as our primary play finisher. We're still going to get you these off-ball opportunities, but we are giving more touches. We are giving more creation burden to Evan Mobley, because we think that is going to be how we can beat these playoff defenses. This is how we can make our offenses more playoff proof. And this is how we can beat some of that pressure that teams are going to throw at a smaller backcourt.
Yeah, what I would say is I actually am not that interested in Donovan's load management in the regular season. I don't think it could be much. It's not going to be much less than it was this year. What I would propose, though, is that you just continue to manage his load stylistically into the playoffs, by continuing to play the way you played all regular season. I want Donovan to be able to go ballistic for 6 minutes at a time, like he did in game 2 against Miami, but you play Cavs basketball until you got to break that glass. Like they've, in the last 2 postseasons, whether it be due to injury or, that lack of consistency, it's been Donovan's going to do this, try to do a 40 minute night where he puts up, 45 shots. And I just that can't be the plan to start the game. And by the way, you mentioned the Mobley thing, that it's not about shot attempts. It's about touches. You're right. But what I will argue is that if he's getting the touches that if he's not getting the touches that we want him to get, it is impossible for him to get up to 20 field goal attempts.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert doesn't have a lot of 20 field goal attempt games, just being a roll man and a dunker spot lurker. And
let's be honest, if the touches increase, the field goal attempts are going to increase.
That's what I'm saying. And how the touches, are, present themselves. If he's getting elbow touches, he's going to get more chances to post up, to score, to drive, to shoot, to whatever it is. You just only get so much being a pure dive man or a pure dunker spot guy or a pure spacer. You have to actually be involved in the core of the offense. It's really hard for DeAndre Hunter to get up to 20 shot attempts if he's not, being worked towards. And that's a guy who has no problem shooting.
Yeah. I got a question for you. This was brought up in our Discord, and initially I think I may have brushed it off to some extent, and as I've sat with it more, I think it's a valid question to ask. Should the Cavs try to be a higher passing team next year? Because they were a very high assist team last year. They were near the top of the league when it came to, assisted field goals and things like that. But from a passes made standpoint, they were 28th with 267 per game. The Indiana Pacers were second in the NBA with 330. So we're talking about a 70 pass difference. Do you think that there's some value in, hey, we're going to reduce how much Darius and Donovan are asked to create on ball and to try to beat the kind of pressure that these longer teams are going to throw at you by the pass? We are going to find Evan Mobley earlier on, whether that is, if teams are throwing full court pressure, we're going to use Evan Mobley to help break that press. We are going to find him earlier. We're going to get the ball moving, and then they're going to attack a destabilized defense after the fact. Do you think that there's some value? I don't think they need to be, that high up. I think the passing efficiency that they had was phenomenal. And when you are a lower passing team, it's going to make you one of the better turnover teams in the NBA, which the Cavs were. So there is, pros and cons when it comes to both of this. But I do think, I think back to high school where, our coach had the quickest dribbler on the team try to go full court. And it was like, all right, let's time that, see how fast that was. And then the second time he had him do the drill, he threw it past the length of the court to someone that was running without the ball. And he's like, see how much faster that is? I feel like one of the ways you can beat pressure is by getting the ball out of your hands as you see the pressure coming and using guys like Evan Mobley and other front court players to help break that pressure that we see teams use.
Maybe. It's an interesting thought. Shout
out our Discord.
Passing isn't necessarily indicative of success. It's important to say there. Golden State and Indy lead the league in passing. The next four teams, the Chicago Bulls, the Phoenix Suns, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Toronto Raptors, then the Washington Wizards as the lucky number 5. So I don't think it's inherently
right down there with us. They're 26th. They have 2 more passes per game.
Yep. So there's, and then you look at the bottom of the league, Houston, a very good team. Dallas, at their best, a pretty good team. The Clippers, the Pistons, the Thunder, the Celtics, the Grizzlies, the Bucks. The pedigree on one side of that spectrum seems a lot better than the other. And I do think one of the things that I liked about the Cavs, because they were, I want to say, 4th or 5th last year in passes per game. Checking right now, they were 5th. I do feel like some of those passes were the old habit that I hated, which was, letting perfect be the enemy of good.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Cavs this year put so much pressure on teams by having so many guys feeling empowered to catch, attack, and I don't really want that to go away just because they stopped playing that way in the postseason because they stopped playing a diverse attack that empowered a bunch of dudes to play that way. And that's where I always go back to the, what lessons you choose to learn from. And I'm not sure that's where my attention is focused right now, I guess is what I'm saying. I just want them to attack in the ways that I saw them do it all regular season.
I want them to be better than that. I want, from an Evan Mobley involvement standpoint, I think that it needs to be better than it was through the regular season. I think it needs to be a more consistent feature. And I just found that topic interesting because I do think it ties into Mobley because he is such an intelligent passer. Both of our bigs really do kind of excel in that category. Max excels as a front court option there. I just think using them to break the press is very important. I guess it's almost a little reductive, but I think we need to, in circling back to talking about the core 4 and how, Mobley, Garland, Mitchell, they're just from a level of importance standpoint, I think they're just ahead of Jared, with all due respect, who honestly deserved all-star consideration last year, but was on the outside looking in. I do think you almost have to take a big three approach to some extent, and they do that to some extent, where Jared is feeding off of them. It's not someone that you're designing a lot of touches for. But I think I really want to see the importance of Evan Mobley and the consistency of Evan Mobley being used in the offense to increase, whether that is as a playmaker, whether that's as a scorer, just making sure that that is a continued point of emphasis, because I don't think we're getting to the mountaintop unless Evan Mobley's ready to get there. And I don't think that those habits are going to be in the right place in the playoffs if you are not dedicating to yourself to that all regular season. I think that was one of the things we saw in the regular season that translated to the playoffs. It just resulted in losses in the playoffs. Whereas in the regular season, we glossed over it because we got wins. We got to stop treating Evan Mobley like he's Kevin Love. We're giving him, his first quarter touches to get the stats, and then we go away from him the rest of the game. He needs to be part of the Cavs ecosystem offensively consistently when he's on the court.
That I will not argue with, brother. It does feel like that's going to be my big story of the year, is just like anything that doesn't serve that. Because I just feel like I've seen too many times the limitations of the guard focused attack. And
it only works. The only examples in NBA history where these shorter backcourts end up winning is when they have the front court initiation. We've been saying it for years. Draymond was that guy for Steph and Jordan Poole. I know, Jordan Poole is an inch taller than Donovan Mitchell. He's a much worse defender than Donovan Mitchell. He doesn't have the wingspan of Donovan Mitchell. Darius is an inch shorter than Steph Curry. I understand that, but he has a taller standing reach than Steph. He has a longer wingspan than Steph. I think that is, if height is the only thing you're talking about, I think that is a valid example. If your counter to that is, well, yeah, Steph's great, I would say, so, talent is part of the equation and it's not just about height. So, maybe these comparisons about other short backcourts aren't one-to-one. But I think that's, as an example, Toronto, when Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry were playing 15, 20 minutes per game together at 5'11", they won because they had Marc Gasol and Kawhi Leonard that could help break that pressure in the front court. All the examples you see had that front court playmaking. Evan Mobley needs to be that guy. It's the point we've hammered home. And I think when we look at the offseason, that is the number one thing that I think we need to talk about. And it has to be part of, on the Cavs' radar to change.
Yes, it does, brother. It's going to be a long offseason because, so much of that isn't something that you can transaction your way to. They just have to, they have to realize it. They have to believe in it and internalize it in a way that that is really meaningful. And I do think, as we get through the offseason, as we kind of hit the end of this pod, we are going to, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the things we wouldn't do. I do think we have things we believe in, changes that we would make to, a little further down the line in terms of what styles of players we're interested in filling out the roster and what styles of players we want to see in the rotation moving forward. So I do want to in the pod with something, maybe a bit of a teaser looking forward of we don't want pure status quo and just give the ball to Evan more. We do want to see some changes. It's just, I do think this was an important, maybe level to set for this podcast's particular discourse.
Yeah. And I messaged you 2 days ago where I'm like, I feel like this podcast might go on for 2 hours, because I was planning on talking about, let's look at the rotation. Let's look at, those guys 7 through 10, how they're being used, how they were used in the regular season, how they were used in the playoffs, what changes we'd like to see there. That was part of my rundown for this here podcast, but we got a lot of weeks of off-season basketball to talk about.
I'm not burning 2 hours in late May, let me tell you, brother.
No, we need to space these out. We're already at an hour here. We can touch on those changes to the rotation that we need to see, but I think, the important takeaway is, one, this Cavs core has the talent to do what they need to do. It's about finding that maturity and finding the ways that empower them to be more than the sum of their parts, which I still do not think that they have managed to be that yet. I think They have played up to that level of talent. I think they were a fantastic regular season team, but they still need to find those ways to be more than the sum of the parts. So we will continue to dive into what's going to help make that a healthier ecosystem for the Cavs, how they can take that next step and contend for a championship next season. It's unfortunate that this was the first season where they didn't meet those expectations that we had going into the preseason, but these types of things happen, and we will see how the Cavs respond to it. Big thanks to everyone tuning in live on YouTube. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.